This is Rally Round the Cannon, some thoughts on Princeton's history by somebody who should know better. This issue's column is all about graphics, namely funny, historic, alumni weekly covers, so you really need to go to the online page at paw.princeton.edu to read it. But for you, the discerning listener, we will tell you about Princeton's greatest pranks from my article in the current print edition. Take an environment that can generate the triangle kick line, cane spree, and the nude Olympics. Let it percolate for 250 years or so, add a pile of 18-year-olds and the Daily Princetonian's annual joke issue, and you would expect some pretty spiffy student pranks to break out. You would be right. From the discovery of the first 500-pound farm animal on the top floor of Nassau Hall, the first dorm in 1756, maybe about 10 minutes after the first undergrads arrived, students have approached with zeal and craft an array of jokes, hoaxes, and physical gags that beggar the mature imagination and often social propriety. Let's count down Princeton's top 10 pranks, at least in my fevered mind. Number 10. When Harold Shapiro returned to become Princeton's president, his home phone number was listed in the local directory. So in 1996, an enterprising group of students printed hundreds of flyers advertising a new pizza joint on Nassau Street offering large cheese pizzas for only $5 and delivery until 2 a.m. with Shapiro's number. The telephone line at the new Hal's Pizza was inundated by midnight, but the resourceful economist found the weak spot in the hoax. He took the phone off the hook. Prank number 9. There was a point behind clapper stealing when it began in 1864. If the Nassau Hall bell didn't ring, you didn't have to go to class, or so students said. Freshmen nabbed the bell dozens of times over the decades, breaking inside locks, climbing outside walls, even masquerading as repairmen. But the expense to the University of computer timing mechanisms, dramatic 40-foot student swan dives onto gravel, and potentially, of course, lawyers, doomed the quasi-annual clapper stealing tradition in 1992 when the clapper was removed permanently. Prank number 8. On the theory that no altruistic gesture should go unpunished, final exams, unproctored thanks to the Honor Code, have proven a marvelous target of opportunity. Many are the examinees, unfailingly ringers, who have burst into sobs and violent rants, ripped their papers to shreds, and stormed out of exam rooms. An inspiring exam hall favorite in the 1960s and 70s was the Red Baron, a dashing ace streaking through to thunderous applause in World War I pilot's leather helmet and goggles, red silk scarf or red cape or red sneakers, and nothing else. Prank number 7. On the Thursday prior to the Yale football game in November of 1979, 4 Yale cheerleaders picked up their mascot, Handsome Dan, for a photo shoot from the professor who owned him in New Haven. They all then vanished. Not being complete sadists, the actually disguised Princeton students who had pulled off the bulldog napping called the owner to reassure him and promise him wine and cigars, then returned the dog to the real Yaleys at halftime of the game at midfield, demurely festooned in orange and black. Prank number 6. The Princeton University Band's track record of friction with authority figures may have peaked with a November 1967 show at Harvard televised by ABC. The network was unhappy with the Scramblers' previously broadcast double entendres and was going to ignore the band. Members got wind of this and invited the TV director to its Saturday morning Cambridge rehearsal. The first formation was a gigantic ABC on the field, with network theme music, while the public address narrator intoned blandishments about a blatant plug. The director thought this was cute, so the network reversed course and carried the band show at halftime. On the field, though, the ABC quickly changed into NBC, and the band broke into Who's Sorry Now? Prank number 5. Awarding extra points for longevity and for repeatedly appearing in front of both administrators and parents, we laudate the Latin salutatory address, a staple since 1748. Ostensibly a display of the graduating students' amazing facility in classical languages, around 1950 it took a huge leap into prankdom by surreptitiously giving only the new graduates Latin cue sheets telling them to hic plaudati, or applaud in Latin, boo or hiss or whatever at crucial points in the speech. Thus, it serves each class as a last bonding in-joke of us against the world. Stubbornly remaining in the original Latin as the rest of the commencement ceremony switched over to English, it continues to this day and ad infinitum. Prank number 4. There have been many inspirational imaginary classmates, usually created to embody group spirit, among them Scott Fitzgerald's classmate Bert Hormone of 17 and Ephraim de Cobble of the class of 1939, who one term turned in, supposedly, 20 signed final exams. But the hands-down winner is Joseph D. Osnott of the class of 1968, created from thin air by 4 members of the sophomore class of 1966, and so well credentialed with great SATs and personal interview conducted by non-Princeton ringers, that he was enthusiastically admitted by an oblivious admission office. Osnott's new class of 1968 took the gag and ran with it, documenting his daring global exploits in class notes over the years, including his relatively recent marriage to his daughter's freshman roommate. Prank number 3. Under pressure from veterans in 1936, Congress made controversial World War I bonuses payable immediately. In view of the grim world situation at the time, an impromptu Princeton student group thereby demanded $1,000 payments in advance to all draft-eligible males, since they certainly would be called into the military soon and were at least alive to enjoy the money now. Gleefully anointing themselves the veterans of future wars, they struck a nerve in the national psyche. 500 campus chapters organized almost instantly, outraging both veterans and Congress. Prank number 2. In 1875, acting on a rumor, Rutgers students stole the Revolutionary War cannon buried next to Clio Hall. It was returned from New Brunswick to Princeton only through the intercession of impartial negotiators similar to today's Middle East diplomacy. Subsequently, a week before the Rutgers-Princeton 100th anniversary football game in 1969, the cannon was stolen again, leaving behind a huge hole in the ground and derisive scarlet anti-Tiger graffiti. Several Rutgers groups took credit, and the Proctors, based in Stanhope Hall about 50 yards from the crater, were abashed. The day before the game, the Princetonian was tipped to the truth. Princeton seniors had dug the pit and piled the resulting dirt on top of the cannon, figuring correctly that no one would bother to look underneath it. The cannon hoax embarrassed the bogus Rutgers claimants and raised Princeton school spirit, slightly salving the Tigers' subsequent 29-0 loss. And the #1 Princeton prank of all time, on the Friday afternoon of house parties in 1963, the desperados swung into action. A car was parked across the dinky line, 4 horses rented from a nearby stable, Masks and six-shooters acquired, supposed victims prepared. The great train robbery went off like clockwork, with 4 students riding out of a John Wayne film to hold up the blocked train on its way to campus, fire a couple blanks, kidnap 4 dates, and then, after politely refusing the wallets and gold jewelry offered by clueless commuters, galloping into the woods, the 8 men and women hanging onto the horses for dear life. The conductor arrived at Princeton Station with the honor of being the victim of the only railway holdup in the United States since 1923. The perps rode over to Cap and Gown in full regalia, stopping by Bo Diddley's live set on the front lawn. Thence they rode west into the sunset and the mists of legend. Now, it's certainly true that a successful prank is dependent upon timing, the prankster, the prankee, and good publicity, not to mention the local forces of law and order. So, this list is necessarily subjective. If you feel your roommate's adventure with the dry ice wastebasket and 2 hamsters should have made the top 10, don't just seethe. Rush to paw.princeton.edu with your story or any other campus prank tale you've heard, and share it by posting a comment to the prank article. It's also a good place to check on prank or hoax rumors you may have long puzzled over. Arguments will be adjudicated by the legendary Liz Greenberg of the class of '02, author of the senior thesis, Barely Remembered, A History of Princeton University Prank Traditions, using the strictest of standards. To wit, what would the Red Baron do? Yours in virtual orange and black, this is Greg Lang of the great class of 1970. Rally Around the Cannon is a podcast from the Princeton Alumni Weekly online.